in an effort to terrify and terrorize the Arab populations living in cities like Haifa, with the express purpose of ethnically cleansing and doing a population transfer and moving all the Palestinians, moving all the Arabs that live there to a different area, only to never allow them to return to their ancestral homes ever again. That's it. They did that. They did psyops. That is so crazy. Things that we knew already that are now getting more broad media coverage, and I'm happy that there's finally like some media coverage over it. Remember how we talked about the quadcopters that snipe Palestinian doctors and children? There's also another use for quadcopters, as you guys know. We've briefly covered this before, but now there's more evidence for it. Quadcopters were emitting baby sounds, playing sounds of screaming women. Palestinians in Gaza say Israel's been using small quadcopter drones equipped with loudspeakers to lure them out of their homes and then shoot them.
جماعة الخير كوادكابتر قتلت صوت أطفال الآن من مخيم.
This is a Palestinian man saying a quadcopter is playing the sound of children
كوادكابتر قتلت صوت أطفال
right now in Nusayrat camp.
مخيم إنصارات.
Yesterday, a young man was killed. He went to check out the noise, and he was shot.
In mid-April, we were informed that Israeli quadcopters were emitting bizarre sounds, including baby sounds or women screaming. I went personally to Nusayrat, and I interviewed several Palestinians separately, and the testimonies were almost identical. Quadcopters were for two consecutive nights, on the 14th and the 15th, I guess, of April. They were emitting baby sounds, playing sounds of screaming women.
Didn't they do this shit in Deir Yassin? Yes, not this specifically, but I believe when they overtook Haifa, I think it was Haifa in 1948. They utilized psyops as well in a similar vein, but this time it was playing sounds from tanks, like British holdover tanks that they had, like equipment left behind that they had put speakers onto, where they would play the sounds of like machine gun fire and bombs exploding, because they didn't have machine guns and that many machine guns and that many bombs. So what they did was like play the sounds of like bombs exploding and machine guns and people dying, so that people would leave. No, Haifa was not the Arab stronghold that Ben Gurion spared. You're thinking of Nazareth. Am I getting it wrong? In 1948, they had like Deir Yassin and a couple villages were ruthlessly slaughtered. I'm right. It was Haifa. Okay. So a couple of the villages were ruthlessly slaughtered. These villages had negotiations with neighboring Arab villages. The Jewish villages had a partnership with the Arab villages in the surrounding region. The Arab villages did not have any sort of like militia defense whatsoever, because they were like, oh yeah, we have negotiations with the Jewish villages around us. Like, we're fine. We trade with one another. We're neighbors. So in Deir Yassin, they did a lot of the atrocities in Deir Yassin, the village of Deir Yassin, with Plan Dalet, that Israelis and defenders of Israel actually claimed Hamas did on October 7, including throwing a child in a baker's oven in front of his dad, and then throwing the dad afterwards in that same oven. First, they tried to get the dad to throw the child in the oven, and when he refused to do so, they threw the dad in the oven afterwards. They made him watch, and then they threw him in the oven. You know, people being thrown in wells, just like endless depravity. So that was Deir Yassin. And the only reason why we know that happened is because they left people alive. Now, the reason why they left people alive was so that those Arab villagers would then go to the village next to, Deir Yassin or whatever, and repeat the atrocities that they had experienced, specifically so that it was easier to purge, specifically so that it was easier to purge the surrounding Arab villages without, having to fight. Okay? They also paraded the people that they captured in Jerusalem in trucks and showed it to everybody, and people were like throwing stuff at them and whatnot, and then they executed them. So this is in 1948. Part of the reason, so what they would do afterwards in like larger towns, for example, would be surround the town with Irgun and Haganah and these many Zionist brigades, militias, some of which were openly, they called themselves terrorists. Okay? They would surround these Arab cities, these big cities like Haifa. Okay? That's literally a Nazi talking point, man. What the fuck you on? At least the OG Nazis have the good graces to shoot themselves after war crimes, many of them. Wait, what? That's fucking stupid, dude. Shut the fuck up. Ridiculous. Anyway. No, that chatter was responding to someone else that was saying like Nazis are better than the original Zionist brigades, which I don't agree with. Anyway, let me finish. So they went to Haifa, and everyone at this point is aware of the atrocities that the Zionist brigades are engaging in. So what they did basically was surround the town and leave one opening for every single person in the town to leave from, right? They would always surround the town and then leave one exit, okay? So that people could leave in an orderly manner, so that the Arabs that are fleeing these towns could leave in an orderly fashion. And what they would do in that process is they would play speakers from the sounds. They would obviously shoot people. They would obviously like explode bombs and stuff as well. Or even there was one documented instance, I believe, of like one plane dropping flyers, which is ironic because they still do that. But in order to not, kill too many Palestinians, like waste too many bullets, they basically would do psyops. And the psyops were using using older British equipment that was left behind, equipped with speakers to play the sounds of bombs and play the sounds of machine gun fire and play the sounds of people dying, okay? In an effort to terrify and terrorize the Arab populations living in cities like Haifa with the express purpose of ethnically cleansing and doing a population transfer and moving all the Palestinians, moving all the Arabs that live there to a different area, only to never allow them to return to their ancestral homes ever again. That's it. They did that. They did psyops. Now the psyops have become even more cruel, where they broadcast intimidating sounds to lure, kill, and forcibly displace civilians in the Nusayrat camp, specifically babies crying, and women crying, the sounds of women crying, so that if someone seeks out the children, thinking that there is like a child in distress, they shoot and kill them. Gaza is a laboratory of violence. I remember listening to Mark Milley and the former Google guy who want to make inroads into the tech violence space, basically. Like a lot of these Palmer Luckey style guys are now actually making inroads with the Defense Department, and they want to change the way that America engages in procurement of new weapons. And I remember listening to them at the time talk in great detail about how Ukraine and how Gaza were basically experimental grounds for so much new technology, and they were worried that America was falling behind. That's another purpose for Israel, which is that Gaza is a laboratory for new ways to be cruel to civilians, new ways of subjugating large numbers of people, and new ways of testing out, new ways of doing research and development on a live population. And as we know, something that I've talked about quite frequently, Iraq used to be a testing ground for American weapons. If you recall, somewhere around like after 2003, the American government started testing what was known as an LRAD. An LRAD is a long-range acoustic device. These are very powerful speakers that are used to stop, any sort of like civilian uprising, right? It's like a sound cannon. And when this experimentation was being conducted on the Iraqi population, Americans were oblivious to it. Now, most police departments all around the country have LRADs that they use on the American population. This is known as the Imperial Boomerang. Okay? The weapons that our government tests out on people that they have less care and consideration for, they inevitably use upon the domestic population. They test it in the field, and if they find it to be effective, then they move it to the home front. Yes, there is a great book called The Palestine Laboratory, How Israel Exports Technology and Occupation Around the World by Anthony Lowenstein. Another example of this, another immediate example of this is Israel itself. Israel not only in collaboration with American local police departments trains in the post 9/11 universe, trains almost every local department on methods of apprehension and strategies that our domestic police utilizes. But also Israel itself used to use, and still does to this day, use skunk spray, a chemical weapon on the Palestinian homes in the West Bank. As an occupying force, the Israeli occupying force utilizes this horrible smelling chemical spray that they spray on Palestinian homes. Okay? No, it's not sewer water. No, that's a different thing that they do. Because Israeli settlements are always uphill from Palestinian encampments and Palestinian homes, they also dump their sewage directly on top of Palestinian villages. But that's besides the point. That's another thing. What I'm talking about is a specific chemical spray that they use that you cannot wash off. The only way that you can wash it off is if you buy the other the other antidote, I guess, from the same manufacturer. It's the skunk weapon. Here it is. Yeah. Skunk is a malodorant, non-lethal weapon used for crowd control by the Israeli Defense Forces and marketed to militaries and law enforcement around the world. It was manufactured by Odor Tech. The liquid's strong odor is marketed as an improvement over crowd control weapons, such as rubber bullets and tear gas, used by the IDF against Palestinian protesters, and they've deployed it against homes, Palestinian homes and whatnot. It's an organic, non-toxic blend of baking powder, yeast, and other ingredients. Now, the interesting thing that I was trying to explain to you is that the weapons have historically been used against the Palestinians. But in the 2018 protests that were launched against the Israeli government by Israeli citizens who were, some of them are pro-apartheid, some of them might not be, but it doesn't matter. Israeli citizens launched a protest against their own government for undermining the Supreme Court's authority and independent status. Those mass protests were squashed with these weapons. So the very same, or not 2018, sorry, 2022. So the very same weapons that were once used and still are used against the Palestinian population were then deployed against the Israeli population. What goes around comes around. This is the Imperial Boomerang. Weapons that are tested out on people that you are trained to hate will inevitably be used on you. There will always be something that you disagree with your government on. And when you push and demand accountability and demand transparency and they don't offer it, inevitably you will protest. And if those protests become too disruptive, the government will use those weapons that you once knew as weapons that would defend your free speech or whatever against your enemies on you. That's it. Skunk was first reported to be used for crowd control in August 2008 in the Palestinian village of Nilin, where daily protests have been taking place in response to the construction of a security barrier. In Hebron, it was used on the 26th of February 2012 to disperse a crowd of estimated 1,000 people, which clashed with Israeli soldiers. During a protest described as commemorating the anniversary of the Cave of the Patriarchs massacre, or as pressing for the reopening of the zone of Shuhada Street. The funeral procession waiting for the riots to be dispersed were also doused with the liquid. In 2017, Israeli forces began using skunk against ultra-Orthodox Jewish protesters. I believe they also used it in 2022 against Israeli protesters that were protesting their own government. You can disagree with I don't know, many things. You can disagree with my approach that you can disagree when I say doner is better than a gyro or something, but I don't think you can disagree with facts, you know, unless you have proof, evidence of some sort that goes against what I am saying. Yeah, I think they use sewage water here, but this might just be regular water against the Israeli protesters that were protesting to release the hostages.
The quadcopters apparently played these sounds only to lure citizens out of their homes and to find someone to shoot. And this was confirmed by actually the reports that we followed up on at hospitals. There were cases of people getting injured by these quadcopters after going out to figure out what was the sound, to try to help.
قطع الساعة 1 في الليل فجأة سمعنا مرة بتزعق في نص الشارع الحقوني النجدة ومعها عيل صغير يعني صوت عيل صغير بيطلب النجدة معها.
Help, with the baby asking for help. The voice was coming from outside the house door. There was a quadcopter with 4 propellers. Then it headed towards the tents, broadcasted the same crying. We called my cousin in the tents. He said, don't fall for it. It's just a sound system. Abu Anas al-Shurur. From this area, they shot him in the head. A recording that my brother took of the quadcopter broadcasting a voice of a child screaming for help or calling for his mother. I wonder if it's recordings of the detained children or paid actors. If it's the first, God forbid, that would be even more horrific. It's a child saying, I want my mother. They sourced it to a small Israeli drone with a loudspeaker over Khan Yunis. Another recording from the occupied West Bank shows an Israeli drone warning Palestinians they may be killed if they resist. Israeli arms manufacturer Elbit Systems produces a weapon system that can be fitted to various drones, which says it can operate day or night and provides highly accurate lethality. Yeah, they also have these drone copters that are retrofitted with snipers and AR-15s, and they are the ones who are sniping kids and shit. Israel did not provide answers to any of the questions. Yeah. Bait Alpha Technologies, the owner of Odor Tech for Skunk. Bait Alpha Technologies has exhaustive sales of the US and India. I don't know why this person who said I don't agree with you on this has stopped. Do you think all future wars will have these drones involved now? Yes. If you're wondering where the video is, I quote retweeted it and said Israel invents a new fresh hell every day in Gaza. It's the laboratory of evil. So you can find it on my profile. It's funny because like all this stuff is readily available for those with, you know, with even a little bit of intellectual curiosity. And it's kind of crazy because like people still, in the face of all of these atrocities, weirdly maintain this like subtle position that they think is defensive, where they say like, no, you don't understand. Like if you criticize this shit, or if you don't criticize it within the boundaries that I think is appropriate, you're anti-Jewish. This has nothing to do with Judaism. And the only people that think this has anything to do with Judaism are fucking Nazis. So why the fuck are you turning around and aligning with Nazis on this in this regard? I've been tracking this stuff fairly closely for a very long time, as you guys know. And even I have been shocked time and time again about some of the new inventions that I have seen Israel utilize, some of the new things that I have found out that Israel has done, like the Cum Squad, the Goon Platoon. If someone were to tell me before October 7 that like Israel has cum divers, people that go in and track fallen Israeli occupying force soldiers and retrieve their fucking semen in a timely manner so that they can impregnate their wives at home in an effort to continue the bloodline, I would be like, nobody cares about, you know, demographic concerns like this is like a made up thing. You're being anti-Semitic. Like this seems like a little far-fetched, you know? I feel like you just made up some anti-Semitic conspiracy theory and you're just saying like, oh, this is what the Israeli army is doing. And then you find out that it is a real thing that Israel is doing. It's just crazy. God damn, dude. Holy shit.